Okay, so how do you embed a quote in your essay? You'll need several embedded quotes throughout your entire essay. It is a significant part of your rubric. So step one, you need to introduce your quotation, which we've discussed this prior to this point in the year, but this is just a refresher. So the example here, step one, introduce the quotation. College provides a diversity of social, academic, and athletic opportunities for students. So this right here, that would be your assertion statement. This can be a powerful positive force, but it can also detract from students' abilities to manage their time. As George W. Bush states, I sometimes overdid it when I was at school, missing out on valuable academic opportunities. Fortunately, I buckled down in my senior year and managed to make a C average, and things have worked out fine since. So we've got the page number for you, that would be the author's last name, in parentheses. You've got an introduction here and quotes. So step two, explain the author's doing in the quotation. The author should agree with how you sum up your own quotation, so you don't want to change what the author is saying. So you've got the same introduction, the same quote, all the way up to this point here. In this example, George W. Bush is pointing out the positive extracurricular activities of college life should be balanced with a responsible approach to studying. Also, the detrimental effects of earlier excesses can be rectified in the senior year of college. So all of this part here is part of what I call commentary, and I look for 2 to 3 sentences of commentary per quote. The third thing you need to do is state the implications of the quote. What did you make of the author's argument? Basically, why did you use this quote without using first person? So everything else is the same up to this point down here where it says while. While George W. Bush is certainly correct with what he implies, it is never too late for a student to raise his or her GPA. It is probably better for students to attempt to balance academics and other activities earlier in their college career. Also, and that would be a nice connecting word, Bush assumes that all students can achieve what they want with a C average, but many students need higher GPAs in order to apply to professional school, graduate school, or graduate entry jobs. This is an extended amount of summary. So they say it also means and while, and those two would be nice linking words. So what ways can you introduce quotes? You can use commas. So in the first example here, they use as Jean admits, and Jean would be the author. So you could say that an author is admitting something, comma. You can introduce a quotation using that with overwhelming defensiveness. The author says that, although I wouldn't use says, I'd use something definitely more intriguing. Introducing a quotation using as blank said, that would be another option. And the exception is now when you have 4 more lines in an indented block, use a colon to introduce the quotation and no quotation marks around the quotation. This is something that is asked of me a lot. This is something that you need to really pay attention to, maybe even take some quick notes on. So when there are 4 more lines, use a colon, no quotation marks, and indent the entire thing if it lasts more than 4 lines in your paper. So the opposite of an embedded quote is what we call a dropped-in quote. An embedded quote flows naturally into our writing. So it usually mentions the author, what article it came from, it talks about it, it flows, it has a comma. A dropped-in quote usually is just thrown in there. It's a sentence by itself in quotes, there's no introduction, there's nothing that connects it with the rest of the paragraph, and it sounds jarring or awkward. Okay, so just some final notes here. You'll have your works cited page that is attached, and the first name in each citation would be what you put in the parentheses. So failure to document anything properly is going to be plagiarism. So you want to make sure you're doing it correctly and ask for help during class. Some rules to kind of go by. Never quote anything you don't fully understand. You never want to put anything in there that is something that's questionable to you. Only quote what you know. When you quote, you copy passages exactly as they appear. You don't get to put in your own words. You don't get to change anything. Quotes are marked with quotation marks. Page references and the parenthetical, which is this right here, that's where you would put your last name. Quotes have to follow the text exactly. Whatever is stated in your research needs to be specifically stated. You can shorten long quotes as much as possible, Cut out everything you don't absolutely need. I get asked this question often as well. Anything you don't absolutely need to make your point, and put the ellipses, the dot, dot, dot. And then if you notice here, here's a great example that you can look at in this essay, in his essay, or in the article blank, written by blank. This is what they say. Never quote a whole sentence without saying the quote, what the point is beforehand. So beforehand, you should say what the main point is if it's a complete sentence that you are quoting. Here's an example of that. In the 7-lesson school teacher, John Taylor Gatto explains that our school system discourages independent thinking, colon, would be the punctuation used, and then the quote. A professional way to quote a whole sentence is to break the sentence in half and insert the name of the author and his credentials into the middle. So the example they've given you here has the quote, the credentials, and the author in the middle, and then the rest of the quote. If you quote a source from another source, an indirect source, so you have something else quoted within a research article, a study quoted, something else quoted that it's within something else that you're reading. Attribute the quote to the person who actually said it, and then add to your documentation to alert your reader that you are using an indirect quote. So the thing that you add for an indirect quote would be this little QTD. A quote means you don't have the original citation. It was something put into something else you read. Beware of the haunted paper. Never assume that the reader knows your sources. Quotes floating in a paper without proper context or proper connections are what we call ghost quotes, because we have no attachment. They have no attachment to anything. Paraphrase most of your sources. It's okay to do that. You still need to cite them, though, by the last name of the author. So please, number 10 here, when you paraphrase, you take ideas from your source, put them in your own words. So read the idea several times, turn it over, don't look at it, and try and rewrite it in your own words. You cannot have 2 words in a row that are exactly like the author. You have to make sure that you've changed enough of the words. So nothing signaling a beginning or an ending of a paraphrase. It's very important that you mark the beginning of each paraphrase by mentioning the author's name and where you borrowed it from, and that you end the paraphrase with your parenthetical information. Below here is an example that you can take a look at on how to correctly put your quotes in.